Okay, now you're live.
Okay, good morning. Maria Royal with Legislative Council. I'm here to convene the meeting and call the meeting to order. This is the Joint Information Technology Oversight Committee, the first meeting of the biennium. All new appointees, 3 senators, 3 representatives. Today is August 26th, 2025. So the first order of business on the agenda is the election of a chair. Maybe before I open it up for nominations, we can quickly just go around the room and introduce ourselves.
Representative Laura Civilian.
Senator Randy Brock. And I'm Senator Rob Plunkett, it's the Bennington District.
Folks online?
Yep, I'm Representative Kathleen James from the Bennington 4 House District.
Representative Monique Priestley, Orange 2.
Okay.
We can't hear you.
We can't hear you.
Oh,
You're on mute somewhere.
No, it looks like he's unmuted, but his mic's not working.
I think it's the, yeah.
Well, he works that out. I am Rick Sewell, Office of Legislative Counsel. Good to see you all again.
and also in the room, just to mention, Lisa, do you want to introduce yourself?
My name is Lisa God and I'm the IT consultant with JFO.
And then finally, our wonderful committee assistant.
Megan Canella, Supervisor of Committee Services. Nice to see all of you.
Okay, and great. At this time, the floor is open for nominations for the chair.
Still haven't heard David.
Is he unable to? Senator Weeks, can you hear us?
Can you call in, Senator? He's gonna call in.
Okay, so maybe we'll pause then and just let him.
That's a lot of bills. For 1 year.
Not yet.
We heard him earlier,
Yeah,
right?
we did.
We spoke to him.
Looks like his mute is on. If you look to the left of his name, that's a mute sign, isn't it?
Right now, yeah. Zoom is muted, now he's unmuted. The microphone itself might be muted. It's like he might be writing a sign for us.
No.
Doesn't say help on it.
Yes.
Okay.
Can you call in, Senator? Oh, man.
Senator, are you okay? Is everyone okay if we open the floor for nominations at this point? And the
Try to
senator
do
maybe
something,
can.
Yeah.
Can you hear us, David?
Test. Yeah, I can.
Oh,
hear
there we
you.
go, there we go, there we
Okay,
go.
Oh, there we go. All right.
Good
All
business.
right.
Who are you, sir?
Senator Dave Weeks, representing Rutland County. Good morning.
Good morning.
Maria,
Okay.
I'd like to make a nomination for chair.
Okay, please.
Okay, hold on, sorry. Phone. Okay. I would like to nominate Senator Rob Plunkett to serve as chair of this joint IT oversight committee. Rob grew up in Bennington, educated in public schools there, and went on to Amherst College where he studied computer science before majoring in political science. After college, he put those technical skills to work. He programmed a database for a private investigator in California, and then returned home to serve as a data analyst and database programmer with Global Z International. Many of you may recognize the Gardner family name Leonid and Dmitry, whom Rob worked with at Global Z. Rob then pursued his law degree at Brooklyn Law School, where he studied computer and internet law alongside criminal law. For the last 18 years, he has served with distinction as a prosecutor in the Bennington County State's Attorney's Office. Now, what makes Rob such an excellent choice to lead this committee is not only that technical and legal backgrounds, but his ability to engage deeply, ask incisive questions, and bring people together. As vice chair of the Senate Committee on Institutions and IT, he has shown exactly that by diving into the difficult landscape of emerging technology issues, ensuring we craft thoughtful, responsible policy. Rob's career reflects a blend of technical know-how, legal acumen, and a commitment to public service. He's a collaborator in the truest sense of the word, and I believe he is uniquely positioned to maximize the efficiency and effectiveness of this committee. I strongly urge support for Rob Plunkett as chair.
I will second that.
Are there any other nominations?
Yes, I'd like to submit a nomination, please.
Okay,
Okay, I'd like to nominate Senator Randy Brock. I think we all know Randy quite well. He's got a depth of experience across the legislative process. Very effective leader. I didn't prepare an introduction as eloquent as Monique, but I think we all know Randy quite well, and I think he's well suited for the position.
any further nominations? So at this point, is there any further discussion? Comments?
Perhaps the two candidates could say a word or two about prospective nomination and prospective election.
They are welcome to if they would like to.
I'll defer to you, Brian.
I've been chair of this committee previously. In fact, I was its first chair, although the term was a relatively short one because the committee was formed mid-year rather than at the beginning of the year. There are a number of things that this committee has achieved, and some of them I think we've fallen back on and need to get back on track. One of them was really to have the committee, since it's an oversight committee, have a clear oversight of information technology within state government. We started, if those of you who were here and those of you who watched the committee's progress in the past, have noticed that one of the first steps was to begin to get and ensure that we had an effective inventory of all of the information technology systems and projects that were in state government, and particularly the systems, some of which had fallen to the side. We also noticed in particular that as we looked at the state as an enterprise, it was often treated as an enterprise involving the executive branch and not the other branches, in particular the judiciary, which we left aside. I think one of the interesting things that we found by beginning to dig into this was that the information technology groups around state government, of the three main branches of government, hadn't ever met in person together. And we got that fixed. And one of the things I've noticed in the past, 5, 6, 7 years that the committee's been in existence is we have to ask every year, did you in fact meet and when, and what did you do? Because these things tend to fall by the wayside, which again is one of the effective things that an oversight committee does, is it understands what it is providing oversight of. I think one of the things that we also need to do, and we need to do better than we've done in the past, is do the kind of risk assessment that any oversight group ought to do so that we can put in order the things that need to be focused on and those things in which we have concerns about are weaker. In particular, as the environment that we're in consistently changes and continuously changes. I think we have to do a better job of maintaining oversight and ensuring that those parts of state government do in fact pay attention to this and keep us advised of what they do. I think the thing that's important is that we are not the committee of jurisdiction, that ours is an oversight role. It is not a role to necessarily do what the committees of jurisdiction, both of which actually are relatively new, need to do, and to ensure that that in fact is being done, and to be that nag and reminder that sometimes is so important to do. My background, as many of you may know, has been in providing oversight in the corporate world. I was an executive vice president of one of the largest financial services companies in the world, and that oversight included was not simply oversight, but was but managing and being in charge of it. One of the groups that I managed and had oversight was the information technology group and the information security group both digital information as well as other kinds of information. That's about it, but thank you.
All right, so I will be much shorter, I think, and I think I'm probably only speaking to Senator Weeks, Senator Brock here. But the choices that we have with Jitoc now is, where's the committee going to be going now that we have specific committees of jurisdiction or subject matter committees in the legislature, and it's in looking back on what Jitoc has done. Obviously, I wasn't here, but Representative Sibilia and Senator Brock, you were both here the entire time that this committee has existed. Senator Priestley was here last session for the entire time. Senator Weeks was part of it too, and Representative James and I are the brand new people to this committee. And the choice is really, are we going to continue the same way it's been for the past 6 years, or is it going to be a new committee that's going to be an actual oversight committee that will not actually be a policy committee and determining what the subject matter committee should do, but will actually do oversight. And when this was proposed to me, I thought about it for a while, thinking, well, isn't this Senator Brock's time to do this? But it would be his time to do it again. And looking at it as something new, being a prosecutor, being the chair of oversight, I think makes a lot of sense. In that I'm going to be bringing my both my history of investigation into different avenues, and my I suppose not actual litigation, but preparation for a trial in the discovery phase of what would be a regular lawsuit. And that's how I see the oversight of this very broad subject to need. And so that I'm hoping my fellow senators will join me and have me be part of the chair, or be the chair of the committee this time around. Thanks.
Any further discussion, comments? Okay, so at this point, just since Senator Plunkett was the first nomination, we will take a vote on his nomination as chair. All those in favor, please say aye or signal yes if that's your
Aye.
Laura, Senator Plunkett. And online, we have Representative Priestley and Representative James. So that is 4 members, that's a majority. And Senator Plunkett, you are the chair.
And thank you all. I appreciate the faith that the 3 of you have put into me. I hope that I can live up to this. Senator Brock and Senator Weeks, and Maria, you already did the first thing I was going to do by introducing everybody. So I think we'll just move right into what we need to do next is
election of the vice chair.
Nominations for vice chair. So I'll open it to nominations for our vice chair.
I would like to nominate in a much less extensive and eloquent and prepared way, Representative Priestley to be vice chair, and think that her experience both on the committee and in this policy realm, both in the state of Vermont and nationally, are well suited for helping to lead this committee.
So Representative Priestley's been nominated. I don't think we need a second, but I'll open it to anybody who wants to second that.
Happy to second if one is required.
And so we have 1 nomination. Are there any other nominations for vice chair? Okay, hearing.
I'd like to nominate Senator Randy Brock as vice chair for all the reasons that Randy articulated a moment ago, both with the corporate knowledge of the committee and the vision for the future. Thank you.
I thank you for the nomination. However, it's been our tradition to split between the House and the Senate, the chair and vice chair. And I think that that's a healthy thing to continue to do. And so I would appreciate the nomination, but I would decline it.
Okay, so we heard a second nomination, and as Senator Brock just mentioned, it does not need to be specifically a member of the House, but he's declined that nomination. So I will hear if we have any other nominations. So hearing none, we'll go to a vote. All those in favor of Representative Priestley as vice chair, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And I'm seeing that as unanimous. So congratulations, Representative Priestley.
Thank you. I'm gonna keep driving, but I'm gonna go off camera, but I will be there as soon as I can in person. Thanks, everybody.
Okay, so moving on, we now have overview of committee charge with Maria Royal and Rick Sagel. So take it away. You know, you had a presentation that we have printed out. So however you split this up, go for it. And just for everybody's sake, in terms of how I like to run meetings in general, unless I hear otherwise from either Rick or Maria, feel free to interrupt, ask questions as we go along. If for some reason that gets out of hand, we'll reassess that. But I like having more of a discussion. Different times we might have it a little bit differently than that. But I think I've seen everyone in committee and everyone's generally respectful. So we can just go that way. So take it away.
Okay, great. Rick, would you like to share your screen and pull up the document that you prepared?
Yes, I would love to. Let me. Oh, I get to put my face on the PowerPoint. This is going to be interesting. Can you all see this?
Yes, that's fantastic, Rick.
Does it still work?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Very good. So again, Rick Sagel, Office of Legislative Counsel. I appear to be floating on everyone's screens. It's kind of a cool thing. I just can't think about it while I talk. So this is again the Joint Information Technology Oversight Committee. For members of the public, those watching, we will refer to it as Jitoc frequently because this is government and we shorten everything to an acronym that can be pronounced. So Jitoc, if you hear that, that's what the acronym means. So this is the first meeting of the biennium for Jitoc, and I thought, Marie and I both thought it would be a good idea for a general overview of the statutory charge of Jitoc, and also a few things to note that the committee may decide to take up this coming year and a half until the end of the biennium, which will be December of 2026. So the statutory charge exists in 2 VSA 614. I have a link if you want to go to it. You can also just Google it and pull it up. This is not the entire charge that Jitoc has, but this is what I want to start with. And I'm not going to read it verbatim, but there are some important things to note here. It is intended to oversee investments in and use of information technology in Vermont, and to provide periodic advice on legislative information technology issues. I think Chair Plunkett mentioned that this is not, I think it was you, apologies not, this is not a policy committee. This is not, you do not make laws in this committee. You merely provide oversight to the committees of jurisdiction, which are currently the Senate Committee on Institutions and the House Committee on Energy and Digital Infrastructure. There might be some other committees that appropriations might get involved in a few things, and you can certainly advise those committees as well. So the powers and duties of this committee: it shall oversee, evaluate, and make recommendations on the following: the state's current deployment, management, and oversight of IT in the furtherance of state governmental activities. That includes data processing systems, telecommunication networks, and related technologies, particularly with regard to issues of compatibility among existing and proposed technologies. That's pretty broad, okay? Especially when you use the term related technologies. So if something does not fit in that little description, it's pretty broad, and I would imagine most IT things are going to fit in that description. Issues related to the storage of, maintenance of, access to, privacy of, and restrictions on use of computer-based records. Issues of public policy related to the development and promotion of the private, commercial, and nonprofit information infrastructure in the state. Its relationship to the state government, information infrastructure, and its integration with national and international information networks, and cybersecurity. Okay, so these are the things that the committee has oversight, again, not enacting legislation or not proposing legislation, but certainly making recommendations to those policy committees.
And Rick, before you move on, I'm gonna interrupt, but you had mentioned that that's incredibly broad, the scope, and to me, it reads not just government IT, but actually all of the state of Vermont. And my question for you is, and it might be a question that Maria might be able to answer better, and perhaps Senator Brock or Representative Sibilia, is that in the past, how has this committee frankly narrowed that down to something that's more focused in terms of, have they taken it each topic one by one, has been focusing on one topic for the entire, half of a biennium, or has that not been happening?
I would say we have been focused when the legislature has asked us specifically to look at certain things, and then it's really been at the discretion of the committee itself, what is of concern or interest to the committee and the chair. Of course, we've had some consistency, as Senator Brock has said, around the three branches of government and making sure that there's some cooperation there, and looking at IT projects generally.
We've also tried to prioritize, and the priorities include those large systems that are under development right now that have the potential of creating disasters for us or mitigating disasters that already exist. So that's been one priority. And so we've looked at those priority projects in a bit more detail. We've also tried to focus on security issues, those kinds of problems that could develop that are happening elsewhere. We basically read the newspaper and we see what's happening elsewhere. We always ask ourselves, can this happen here? And it's not that we ask ourselves, we ask the people who are actually doing the management and the work of IT to come and talk to us about those particular issues. And then lastly, we listen to the committees of jurisdiction who come to us asking questions that they would like us to look at in more detail because we've got the time to do it.
Okay, and so I'm hearing it's been pretty focused on state government IT, and that we're not talking about, private, companies.
Typically, we are not.
You had mentioned, Senator Brock, you had mentioned earlier that judiciary had not been a focus or been left by the wayside. Did I hear correctly?
No, it's been necessarily left by the wayside.
It was the lack of coordination that we had.
Oh,
focused on
the
between
lack of coordination between the branches of government. The three, that has been an issue. And probably judiciary has been almost the outlier. There's a high degree of cooperation between the executive branch and the legislative branch, but less so on the judiciary. And in some cases, we've had to light a fire of sorts in order to ensure. But thus, lately, we've gotten, I think, a reasonable degree of cooperation, although there's some concerns here and there that we can talk about when we get into the details.
Thank both of you. And Rick or Maria, do you have anything to add?
I think the only other thing I might add, in addition to, I think the bulk of your attention and the charge is related to IT projects of the state in particular. But as you noted, it is written so that it could be broader. And then also the broadband deployment in the state, which interrelates with state networks, government-owned private networks. This committee also hears annual updates from the Vermont Community Broadband Board. So you're aware of what's going on. You're going to be hearing from Executive Director Christine Hallquist later today, but just wanted to fold that into the discussion. Yeah.
Thank you. And sorry to interrupt you, Rick.
No.
Looking at there.
I was warned that you might interrupt or that you may allow others interrupt. So that is completely fine with me. I don't have much to add, but I will let this transition nicely into my next slide. Because sometimes the General Assembly will enact a law that specifically calls out this committee. I have a couple examples where you're actually needed to usually release funds Again, your statutory charge does not give you any inherent authority to enact legislation or propose legislation. However, the General Assembly can say, upon approval of Jitoc or in coordination with Jitoc, which it has a few times. So, for example, in Act 3, 2023, the Assembly authorized $40 million from the Technology Modernization Special Fund, more about that in a second, for the ERP project, but required Jitoc approval before those funds could be released. So that's something where the Assembly will occasionally really need your action to do something. In 2022, along the same lines, the Assembly authorized $10 million from the Tech Special Fund for the UI project, but again required Jitoc approval before funds could be released. So that could be used more in the future. It's something that you could suggest to the Appropriations Committee if you feel it's important that Jitoc should be involved more in that. It's up to you all. It's pretty unusual. I'll put it that way. I don't see a lot of things being appropriated contingent upon a joint committee approving of the release of funds. Doesn't mean you can't do it. It's just kind of unique to this committee, it seems. The Technology Modernization Special Fund is codified in 3 VSA 3306. I may let Lisa or someone in the JFO speak more specifically about the fund, but I think it's important for us to be aware of what it is and what it's used for, because a lot of the funds that ADS will get is from this fund. ADS being the Agency of Digital Services. Monies in the fund, this is in the statute, shall be used to fund business process transformation and to purchase, implement, and upgrade technology platforms, systems, and cybersecurity services used by state agencies and departments to carry out their statutory functions. The General Assembly shall prioritize projects to receive monies from the fund based on recommendations from the CIO, which is the Secretary of Digital Services, submitted pursuant to subsection A of this title. Expenditures shall only be made from the fund through appropriation and project authorization by the General Assembly. So again, that you'll hear a lot about this fund. A lot of the money that you are looking at will be from this fund and authorized from this fund. Maria, did you want to add anything to this page?
No, I think that's great, Rick.
Okay, a few things that you may be aware of that happened in the last session. The Big Bill Act 27 made a small change, but it's interesting, to the fund I just talked about. So in that statutory language, the language used to be that the fund shall consist of any amounts transferred or appropriated to it by the General Assembly. That is now just transferred, or appropriated was removed. You may want to ask JFO about that, if that's just a kind of accounting maneuver, or if there's actually more meaning behind it. I'm not sure of the specific reasons that language was changed, but it was changed for this coming year.
May I ask a question? So, can the General Assembly appropriate money to the Tech Modernization Special Fund now? Based on that change?
It could be just the language is what that they think JFO and the appropriations committees prefers the language transferred. That's kind of semantics might be the issue, but okay. I would JFO about that.
Okay. Yeah, I'd confirm, but it might be that the money is appropriated to the agency and then the agency transfers to the fund. But I'll check on that. I'm not familiar with it, but I'll check and see with it.
And I think Rep. James has a question.
Yeah, I think.
Oh yeah. We cannot see everyone.
I can see it. I'll keep an eye out while I share my screen.
Thank you, Rick. Yeah.
Hi, folks. Yeah, just a question. I'm just trying to refresh my memory. As I recall, this fund is used just sort of as a holding bucket. And when projects come up that are approved, we transfer specific amounts of money in there on kind of a one-time basis. And there's no ongoing revenue stream or required appropriation to keep that fund sort of building up or saving toward future projects. Is that right?
Rep. James, you're speaking to the Tech Modernization Fund.
Yep.
So I would defer to JFO on that specific fund. I don't know if Lisa can speak to it, probably not, but I think if you want a more detailed analysis about that fund, I would request that Emily Byrne or one of her colleagues would come and talk about it because they deal with it so much more than we do about the ins and outs of, or I think James Duffy from JFO would also know quite a bit about that.
Sounds good. Thanks.
Okay, I'm going to reshare. Let me know. Can you all see the screen?
No,
Not yet? Okay. Let me try this.
yes.
Okay. And I'll do the from current slide. Okay, so back to the notable legislation. Act 48 passed out of the House Committee on Energy and Digital Infrastructure. This act made some changes to the reporting requirements of ADS. Really, it requires a more kind of thorough information about their larger IT projects, not just in their reporting, their annual reporting, but also on their public-facing webpage. They do have to keep a project's dashboard, which has more detailed information about if the project's on budget, if it's over budget, if it's late, if it's on time. It's actually a pretty cool feature. I'm sure the secretary will talk about it or maybe show it to you at some point. But that was passed this year in Act 48, something that you all might want to look at some point. In fact, I have the link to the inventory there you can click on. In Act 40, this made a small calendar change for the UI project. It was due on July 1st, 2025, and it was pushed to July 1, 2026. I don't know the reasons why it was pushed, but just so you all know, the timetable has been pushed back a year for the implementation of that project. Okay, this is the last slide, and this is in regards.
I'm sorry, Rick, can I just interrupt briefly? Chair Plunkett, it would be great to hear an update on the UI
Yep.
system, which has been sorely needed for
Thank you.
decades.
I was making that note as well as the note about the overview of the Tech Modernization Fund.
Can I just add one thing? I just, while Rick was talking, I just looked up the statute on the Tech Modernization Fund. And Representative James is correct. There's not a consistent revenue stream that feeds into the fund. It's just the amounts that are transferred to the fund. And any interest that's earned and any balance remains in the fund. So you can get an update of the current balance and expenditures.
Back to you, Rick.
Maria, back to this. So in the Jitoc statute, there is a subsection E that, in addition to electing the chair and vice chair, which you have done, also calls for the adoption of rules of procedure. To my knowledge and to Maria's knowledge, this has not been done before by Jitoc. The word shall is an interesting choice in this language. It seems like it would require you all to adopt some type of rules of procedure. Talk about that here in a second. But so you all know, there's been discussion about this committee in the last couple of years have had executive sessions based on cybersecurity issues that have been brought to you. So joint committees like this one are governed by joint rules and the Senate and House rules, in addition to being governed by your statute and the Vermont Constitution. This year, because the chair is a senator, Senator Plunkett, the Senate rules will take precedence over the House rules, but not over statute or the Vermont Constitution. So this is a long way of saying that if you do decide to adopt rules, even rules about executive sessions, those rules cannot override. Your rules can override the Senate rules or statute or the Vermont Constitution. And I do have a link to the Senate rules specifically on the executive sessions. We can talk about that if there is a desire to talk about that. But I think it would be a good idea to see what you all want to do about the rules of procedure. If you have any thoughts about that at this point, maybe not.
And Rick, thank you for bringing that up. That was going to be one of the things that I was going to be proposing. I was going to speak with you folks afterwards. And I'll just ask now, do you already have a proposed draft of rules that reflect what other committees have done, and specifically something that outlines the procedure for which we have to enter into executive sessions? If not, speak about it later.
Yeah, nothing proposed, Senator. We wanted to wait for obviously the chair election and kind of see what the committee wanted to do. You do have a couple options. There are a few committees. LCAR, I believe, has some joint rules that they've adopted. Most joint committees don't actually have that statutory language that gives them that authority. You are welcome to adopt the there's Mason's rules. There's different ways you can do this. You can also say we adopt the Senate rules except for things that aren't covered in the Senate rules. You can, if you want to do a few things that aren't already going to be overridden by the Senate rules, you can lay those out in your rules of procedure. But again, something like executive session, you cannot really go against what the Senate or even the House rules. That would be a backup. There are no House rules on executive sessions, but you would not be able to conflict with that set of rules, if that makes sense.
Yes,
And we certainly have in past history gone into executive session on a regular basis, particularly when we're dealing with issues involving data security or security procedures. So it's not uncommon.
Yeah. I think it would be a good idea to at least discuss what you all want to do about that. And then Marie and I can draft something for you all to consider at the next meeting.
And just for now, I believe you said it, Rick, we are still governed by you said right now it's the Senate rules that we'd be following regarding committees, which all of our committees are run by that, although I've never really found that they're followed all that well. So, but that will be a topic of discussion.
Right. And that's my PowerPoint. We do have an update on the ongoing projects and kind of a list of what those projects, you may have a printout next to you. I would have Lisa also speak about these projects. She knows more about the nuts and bolts of what's going on. But certainly I can be available to answer any questions, or Maria, about the legal issues going on, if there are any in these projects.
Thanks, Rick. And yeah, let's just move right on into the next agenda item, which is review outstanding items and upcoming projects with Legislative Council Maria Royal, so Rick Sagel, and Lisa Galvin. You've already introduced yourself, but please introduce yourself again.
For the record, my name is Lisa Galvin. I'm the IT consultant with JFO. So the review that we have isn't the annual review update that I do, which I complete right before session is done, but we have summarized the projects for you. And I have some additional items to add in some cases. So please let me know if you have any questions as we're going through these.
And we're going off the printout.
Off the printout, yep. So.
And just so everyone knows, it's on our website, review of committee action items.
So the first project is the network and security modernization. In the write-up, I've noted the appropriation, which was $10 million in FY24. So this project is underway now. I didn't do a formal JFO IT review on it. It wasn't one of the projects I was requested to review, but we are keeping tabs on the project. So it did undergo, it went through the RFP process. The CIO did her independent review on the project, which was successful. They awarded the contract to Presidio and some subcontractors. Now, the thing to note about this, and I highlighted the appropriation was 10 million, but you'll see the third bullet up from the bottom. It said the total estimate for implementation is 1.5. Now, the reason those numbers are so different is this project, they chose to go with a leasing situation. And this is really in alignment with the state schools, like they're doing more cloud services implementations when it's available, because they want to move into a more subscription model for IT systems, but also with leasing. Under the lease, the equipment is upgraded after a certain number of years. So although the implementation cost is lower, the annual operating costs are a bit higher due to the leasing, but what they're doing is they're avoiding that initial bump and investment where you need the legislature to appropriate a big sum of money to implement a new network, for example, because they have to buy all the new equipment. So that's why the numbers look a bit different, 10 million appropriated versus 1.5 implementation. But the overall operating costs through 2030, it's 22 million. So they're funding it through the appropriation and through their internal funds, which they do. I'm not sure how the rules changed with ADS operating budget last year, but they do have traditionally done bill back to the departments to pay for their share of the network usage, for example. So this project was started this summer, and they're underway. I'm not sure if I have the date of completion. I'm not sure I know the date for the completion because I haven't seen the project plan for this particular one. But it's through 2030 for the actual contract. So that's what I have about that. And now I assume all of these projects, you can invite the CIO and to speak to various projects too over time. And as I get more information, I can update the committee as I become aware of them.
Before you move on to the next project, just
Sure.
So is everyone here? I think everyone's familiar with the review process that JFO does, CIO does their own independent review, or should we go over that? If anyone wants to, we can. Seems like everyone's set. So, but
So the next project is the Unemployment Modernization Fund, and I know you were just speaking of that. This was actually, I have some background that might be useful to you. My predecessor was Dan Smith. And one of the first things I watched was a testimony in front of Jitoc in July of 2022, where they approved money for the first phase of the UI contract, and that was the 10 million. And so it did go through a review process. And what Dan told me is that the reason the language was put in there for a Jitoc release of funds is when the project was initially seeking funding, there wasn't the background information that had typically been available to when, the business case, formalized business case. So they said, well, we want to fund this project. We know we need it, but let's just check back with the business case when we release the funds. And that was also my experience for the ERP, the money for the financial management project, where it was deferred for Jitoc to release the funds. It's because at the time there wasn't a lot of detail around the business case for that piece. And so this gave the state time to go through their process, their RFP development, their independent review, so Jitoc and the legislature could make an informed decision about the formal release of funds. So that's my understanding of the background. For the UI project, I think the reason, just mentioned dates and extension of the dates. It was originally developed for 2 phases, the first phase being delivered June 2025. And the second phase, so the first phase was the piece that does the taxing piece of the employers in the state. And the second piece was the claimant phase, so the portal for delivering unemployment benefits. They merged these into one, but it was always the first phase was going to be delivered in June 2025 and the second phase, June 2026. But, and this was one of the findings in the review that I did, was they had originally said they were going to release them in 2 phases, but I didn't see how that could work because remember, they're working with a legacy system, and the legacy system was so tightly bound together between the taxation and the benefits, and the documentation was so, it really wasn't available because it's such an old system that I didn't see how they could possibly detether those pieces from the legacy system in order to successfully launch a new system. And in the end, one of the first things they did was combine those phases. So I've been watching this project closely. I think they're doing a great job. They're on track. I'm so impressed by the project management on this. This is such a hard project. I'm also very impressed with the vendor approach. One of the other things I noted was the difficulty in moving legacy data out of an old system, so old, into a new system. Because you're defining business rules differently, and what might have been perfectly clean data in an old system might not go into a new system that has tighter control of the business rules around the data itself. One of the very first things I started was really looking at that legacy data, which was so smart because not only are they proving what their understanding of what the system is based on the data that's currently being produced. So all those complex rules on taxing, for example, and thresholds and how much people pay and how much people receive. It's very complex. So they're getting their understanding for how the system works while identifying where the data needs to be cleaned and how much data they'll load into the new system. So all of the most complicated things they're just taking on, right, from the start. When I have had questions about this project, and submitted them through ADS, I've gotten such thoughtful responses from the project managers over there on this project. So
Great.
So they, not only are they answering the question, but they are understanding why I'm asking it and they're responding to that pieces too. So it really is the subtleties of it. So I think they're doing a great job. This is one of the toughest things you can do. This and IE&E, toughest projects in my opinion, along with the ERP and state government. So I think they're doing a great job.
Let me ask you a question.
Sure.
One of the things about UI in general is we've been concerned about fraud and fraud management. What's your opinion as to how they're dealing with that in the system combination?
Well, I'm not, based on my role, I'm not able to go into the details of exactly what the fraud issues are and how but I do know, based on their combining these phases and the fact that it made it a less complex project, they had some money. And one of the things they chose to do is go with FAST, which is the implementation vendor, their fraud prevention module. So they are actively working on that. So as far as I can see, they're doing what they can. It would be interesting to hear more about that, but I don't have that.
Again, just to put on the committee's agenda of projects that should have a degree of priority to look at. Fraud and unemployment has been a consistent issue for us. And as we look at the history, we looked at a 10-year history, we had $55 million, as I recall, monies that were not necessarily fraud, but improper payments. And we had a consultant in who allegedly looked at the systems and the issues of fraud issues, and I frankly was very unimpressed with results. And it's just been on my radar for a long time to go back and take a deeper look as this major technology project goes into effect.
So
Thank you, Senator Brock. These are not questions you're able to answer right now.
But I just want to make sure it's on the record for the committee to be thinking about future.
I do have one question. The vendors that you're raising to the moon, who are they?
FAST.
It's FAST.
Yeah, they did the tax system.
Yes.
They also are the vendor for the DMV system. So they have a really successful track record, not just in Vermont, but in other states.
And I interrupted you.
No, what I
Was
was,
that a name change?
no,
Is that fast? Oh, that's.
I'm sure it's Fast Industries or Fast, I don't know.
Okay, it's fast.
Is the word faster? Yeah, okay, we'll find out.
So around the fraud, so if the committee does want me to look into more depth of that, I would just ask that I get my direction through JFO. If you put that question to them, perhaps I can do some more on that and look into the details. But back to FAST. So I spoke to the acting, via email, the acting Commissioner of Labor. I don't have her name written down, I'm sorry. Okay. But I did ask her about, because you'll know in one of the bullets, we had identified that there was $7 million difference between the funds available and what they had already allocated in contract. And we knew they would be using a portion of that for business process reengineering, much like they're doing for the ERP project. When I through communications with the acting commissioner, she said that they had chosen not to go that route because they didn't think they could find a vendor that would be knowledgeable enough about their operations and how fast does their implementation to add benefit. And my response to her was, I'm not surprised, and I was curious on what that would look like. Because it's a very niche area. And what they have opted to do is have FAST help them with that. And that's exactly what the DMV did, and they have been successful with their projects. So I wasn't surprised by hearing that, and I have no issues with that. I don't see it introducing any risk at all. So, but I wanted to make sure that was noted. Any other questions about UI? And again, we can go into deeper details with specific projects in future meetings. Around the ERP project. So I've been watching that unfold. The most recent development, which isn't noted on here, is that the business process reengineering vendor that the state had selected had some issues with financial solvency, is my understanding. I don't know the details behind it. And so that contract ended based on request from the vendor on June 30th. And the state did bring in a new vendor. It's my understanding the vendor they brought in actually included the 2 staff people that were the primaries on the prior vendor, and that the state was quite pleased with their performance and they were delighted that they were able to secure those people through this. So, that's my understanding. I'm working now on the business side with Deputy Secretary Sean Brown, who works for Sarah Clark at the Agency of Administration. He has been fantastic. Every time I need more information, he sees that I get it. So I've been working closely with them. I have seen the new contracts and compared them with the old contracts. So the old vendor was IJA Strategies. Their contract term went up to October 2027. The new partner is called Attain, and their contract has been extended 1 year from that, so it's September 28. That was interesting. The previous contract limit was 2.3 million for IJA, and now it's 2.7 million. And according to the Attain contract, IJA actually completed the planning phase for the human resource piece and the budgeting piece. So I'm not so concerned about the amount changing or the time frame changing. I think they're just getting a better understanding of what's in front of them. We knew that I knew there would be changes in all sorts of things. I still expect more. My opinion of this project hasn't changed.
And just repeat what
my opinion was that I felt like it had significant risk. ERP projects are among the most difficult, and they do have one of the highest rate of failures just traditionally. They're unforgiving because there are so many rules around finance that are just really strict. And there were multiple areas where I identified what I saw was shortcomings in the planning for the project that I thought it would be very difficult for the state to overcome. And my opinions on that haven't changed. What I'm seeing in the scope of work for the business process piece, and remember, these contracts weren't implemented until I was done writing the review. What I'm seeing is they're including what I would normally see done in phase 1 of a business contract. So identification of the current state, identification of the desired future state, and the gap analysis. I have requests in for information about how much was paid under the IJA Strategies contract, because I don't have that information yet. And also exactly what deliverables were met for IJA. For example, the Attain contract says that the business requirements were completed for the human capital management and the budgeting piece. So that means they should have the gap analysis because that was referenced. But it's also a time and materials contract, not a fixed price contract. So it's possible that maybe some pieces were deferred or not quite there. So I need some more details about that. But what I'm saying, I like the contract because it addresses some of the gaps that I identified, but my problem is the timing of it. So the contract for the implementation of the ERP system deals with just that, implementing Workday. So at some place, there's a gap between, okay, are we just implementing Workday or are we replacing Vision? If you're replacing Vision, then who's identifying where those gaps are? And if those gaps are being identified in a time frame enough to actually deliver it on time. And that includes access to this historical data.
And that's something that's still an unknown for you.
For me, yeah.
Okay.
So I see that this vendor, and they're also, the wording in there is great too. It says they're working as an advocate for the state and for the business. And that's really important that that role is satisfied. But I still don't know, how do they navigate the fact that they are identifying gaps for a contract that's already signed and underway? Well, how do those gaps get filled? And then you literally have hundreds of integrations, which can be like, I'm most familiar with the Department Agency of Education because I used to work there. They do transfers from different systems for payments. So thousands of payments for state aid for education that have to be uploaded. And can that be done? And what are the areas of Workday where that might make that difficult? For example, there are some limits on, from what I've read, data that couldn't be uploaded at once and that have to be broken up into multiple pieces. So there's many places where this system could fail, whether it's, do the business people have access to the historical data that they need when they need it, when this goes live? And is there enough time to assure all of those pieces are there? And having this contract is great because they're identifying where the gaps might be between the business and what the chosen financial system can do. But will we have the time to do that? And how much money, additional money, might it cost? So all those it's the uncertainty.
Is that the timing aspect you said that you were concerned
If
about?
this was done prior to, to inform the RFP process, I would be, this is exactly what you need.
Okay.
The other thing to know is there's, even now, there's a timesheet system, a legacy time sheet system for the Agency of Transportation that feeds their legacy stars, their finance system, right? There's questions right now on whether or not AOT can use the current, the Workday system to replace that. And if they can't, how can they replace stars? And so this gets into one of the big risks. Those two systems were in the state's independent review. It said it costs between $20 to $30 million to replace those independently based on what other states have paid. So, so it's sort of like, until you know for sure, it's like a plus or minus, $50 to $60 million, on this project. So that's why I have a lot of concerns about this.
What questions, Lisa? So in addition to just having gray areas of not knowing fully what's going on in the scope and where things are at, I'm curious, have you or has anybody from JFO been in touch with the business managers of the different areas? And does it make sense for Jitoc to hear from those individuals?
I think so. And one of the things, I have been moving forward gathering information based on the oversight recommendations that I have. But what I'm also looking for is direction from Jitoc on assurance that you're interested in pursuing those recommendations. And I think in all projects, we should be talking a lot more to the business people than perhaps we have in the past.
Right. Yeah.
I just think it makes a lot more sense. And that's when you really understand the value of the system too, and all the good things that are being accomplished through the good work for the network that they're doing, the UI system and all of that. And I know from House Energy and Technology heard from another project that we're going to discuss, a future project that I'll be reviewing, which is the CWAS system, which is the DCF system for child welfare. And hearing from the business people about before that appropriation is just so valuable on what it would mean and what they can do. So
I was going to ask you, you have a lot of unknowns. Who knows this? And it sounds like it would be these business managers.
Yeah.
Talk about who we should have.
The business people, and I did outline specifically the roles in the oversight recommendations in my review. And yeah.
The other question I had is, you have access to these contracts.
Yes.
Do we have access to these contracts so that we can review them ourselves?
I don't know. I have
Can these?
I
I would like that. You have those.
don't have the answer to that. I would defer to, because I have a I have a MOU, JFO has an MOU with ADS to look at confidential information. I don't know if they're public, I just don't have that knowledge. So,
And
but
so these would be questions for whom?
for our legal counsel and their discussions with ADS.
Normally, when a contract is issued and signed, it's a public document, isn't it?
I know like for RFP and bids, they sometimes redact proprietary information, so I don't know how much that, I don't have I just don't
Yeah, and
know.
I would understand that, but when
Yeah.
a contract is actually executed, the real issue is in the past, our dependence has been upon you to do that review on our behalf. We haven't noticed any issues, but it's a point that there could be issues that we ought to notice. I think there is also a bigger issue for us as a committee that meets periodically instead of an organization that is live 24/7. There's a level of detail it's very difficult for oversight committees to get to. And so we do have a reliance on those people, such as yourself, who are charged with performing certain functions that we may ask for. That's something we may want to review.
Sure, yeah. I just had one, like every committee, we're gonna be relying on experts, but Megan, I have actually a question for you. If the committee got documents that were somehow confidential and were not public, are we able to have a place where we could access them where the public would not?
I would just email them to the committee rather than posting them on the web.
Yeah, that's a function that the secretary's office does provide us from time to time. We have had situations where we have a confidential ethics issues, for example, are retained in the secretary's office, and members of the committee can go and retrieve them for specific use, but return them there. That's the secure repository.
Okay, so I'll have that discussion offline and Rexability, we're gonna.
Yeah, just to flag maybe something for future conversation. I know we have Chair James here. With the two committees of jurisdiction now clearly established in both the House and the Senate, it might be worthwhile having a conversation about what this committee's relationship is and coordination is with those committees. So with Chair James and Chair Harrison, I don't know.
Having a conversation with them here in the.
I don't know, for future discussion, but that has not been something where we've had really kind of distinct focused committees coordinating with this committee. And it does seem like I have served, so having served on this when there was a previous energy and technology, the past chair was pretty clear, like, I really don't want you meeting when the legislature's in session. And, there was not as much collaboration. So just thinking about the utility of this committee in coordination with those two seems like a good consideration.
We have committee discussion in general.
Great.
So I'm hoping we
Let
can
out.
hash out kind of like everything, but we'll.
Everything.
Stop everything is in the 15 minutes that we have.
Yeah.
But to focus back with Lisa. I think I've asked my questions. Anyone else have any questions? Are you done with the ERP?
Yes.
part of it? Any other questions for Lisa about the ERP project? And Rick, you do.
Sorry, just not for Lisa, but a quick note about the meetings. I didn't give you the full statutory charge of Jitoc, but just so you know, the statute does say the committee may meet when the General Assembly is not in session or at the call of the chair. So that does give you the authority, Mr. Chair, to bring the committee in during session if you'd want to, but I think the intent was mostly for the committee to meet at the end of session. So there's something maybe that needs your attention during session. So just so you all know.
Thanks.
Okay,
So moving on.
So CWAS, the Comprehensive Child Welfare Information System, or DCF. We're just in the early stages of this project. They have issued an RFP. They need to pick their preferred vendor and go through the CIO's independent review, at which point I will be doing a review for this project. I've also, through Representative James, been in contact with other advocates with specific concerns about the RFP process and what is and what has or hasn't been included. So what I will be doing is meeting with them earlier and making sure I understand their concerns fully. At the first glance, it seemed like the things they were worried about aren't things that would have been flushed out specifically in an RFP, but more specifically during the implementation. But I want to make sure it's clear for everyone and it's documented what they're looking for and that we follow up with the business to make sure that they're clear on that and that they have a commitment to making sure the system can provide the information that they're concerned will be missing.
When are you meeting with those folks?
It's not scheduled yet. I'm waiting until I get information about what the preferred vendor is. So in other words, once they have an idea of who they want to select, then I can get the bid information too. Because it doesn't help me to get the bids for all of them. I want to know who the state is going to select, and hopefully I can get it at an earlier phase than I have in the past, which has been when the independent reviewer can get that information. But as soon as I can, I will be moving forward with that.
Getting it earlier, that's just a function of.
Well, it's, do they
getting to,
know?
or do you need someone to?
Well, do they know who it
Okay.
is and when they know who it is?
Yeah, it's just a function of the process.
Yeah, because they typically they do showcase, they do the initial sweep and then they evaluate and then they invite people to showcases and then they have follow-up questions. And then typically the committee makes a recommendation to leadership and will the leadership accept that? And once they know who it is. So, it just makes sense to wait until that process has been followed.
And what's the general timeline that you know about?
They said that I probably wouldn't see an independent review until December or January at the earliest. So it still has a ways to go, and because they need to develop contracting too. So hopefully when they realize who they're contracting with, I can start my work. But they need to develop a contract before they do the independent review typically, or you're not reviewing on a complete project, and there's risk involved with that. And ironically, the next system, I had, JFO was kind enough to go through and it was complicated to figure out exactly how much had been appropriated for this over time. So it's 15.6 million. And also I did have conversations with the Secretary of ADS who told me that they did feel they had enough money to proceed and that they were focusing on doing it in a modular way so they could start getting returns immediately based on the uncertainty of funding and federal issues, right? So I don't know a whole lot about this project yet, but I will be diving in. The next project is the IE&E system. This has been a long time coming. We expect that they'll be asking for state match funds this year. They're also in the middle of an RFP process. And I've been told the timeline's similar, that they didn't expect they would have an independent review until December, January timeframe. So it looks like we'll be looking at 2 reviews at that point.
What aspect of this project is this?
This is for everything that's left. It's for the, remember the portal, the one, going into the system and this is a great project, but I've been told that, remember this is on the legacy access system, which we should really focus on what legacy systems are still in place in the state, because they represent some risks. I mean, these are old things that are still on the mainframe, and AHS, because of the system that's used, it's programmed in natural. It's easier to bring people on that are programmers that can still maintain this system. But this system I've been told, it will merge with a new database while updating the old database because other systems are still using access and might need the information that comes from this particular program. And this would be a good place to invite them in at some point to discuss the scope of this particular system and how things are going. But, there was I noticed a distinct change about, 2 years ago with this particular project of really getting to me, the right team and really narrowing in on a solution and being able to be very specific about their requirements. Remember, federal projects that have federal money, they are required to have a separate vendor overseeing the money. The IVNV, don't ask me what that acronym is. But it's a third party that actually watches and provides advice and gives reports to the federal government on how they think the project is going. So that is in place for this particular system for IE&E. So, there's other people looking at it too, but they've really done a great job over the last 2 years, pulling together some really specific requirements. So I'm very, very bullish on this system. So, but I will be doing a complete review.
And with our new guests coming in, I realize that we're probably a little bit behind time.
We're, I think, right on time.
Oh, if you're finished.
Yeah, I'm finished.
Oh.
That was the last one,
I saw 2 more pages. So.
but those aren't mine. They're not my portfolio.
Those are, yeah.
Sorry. Sorry. Oh, that's right.
Well, just that, and so Rick is doing the
Yeah,
automated decision.
yeah.
Okay.
I don't know anything
Yeah.
about these last 2 things.
Okay.
So it sounds like, Rick, you're telling us something about last 2 pages.
Yeah, so the other IT projects and reports, Maria's got a couple too at the end, the telecommunications and the broadband. Nothing really new here on the automated decision system. This is the ADS has a statutory obligation to make inventory of all of these automated decision systems. They do provide that in their annual reporting. You can see they list off what these systems are, what they do. So if you pull up their report from earlier this year, you can see those. And again, I'll have an update for you because it's once a year. Next, the AI systems. So there is a division of AI that is within ADS, and that was created via statute 5 or so years ago, I want to say. And they are tasked to review all aspects of AI systems within state government. So not private sector, not outside the state, but only within state government. And they also have reporting. I don't know if it's within the ADS annual report or if it's a separate report, but I'm guessing it's along with the ADS annual report. The shared school district financial data management system, I don't know about this one. Maria, are you aware of this system?
I am not at all.
Okay.
If I can, I think this was an attempt by the Department of Education to have a single system for all school districts. But after they did the pilot districts, they realized that it wouldn't meet the needs of all the districts, so the requirement was ended. But they are still hosting the system for the people that were in the pilot, for the districts that were in the pilot. So it's no longer a kind of they're just keeping the system up until the next iteration comes along, I guess.
Thanks. And Rex,
Just going back up to the AI systems. Rick, when did I see the advice and counsel from AI Advisory Council repealed for June 30th, 2027. When did we do that and in what legislation?
It was before I got here, so it was before 2023. And I don't know the reason why, I won't speculate, but it could be that all these things that we create, these task force, these kind of immediate needs are, prospective repeal, right?
Fair.
And sorry, I can't see the screen. So Representative James, go ahead.
Yeah, just if time permits, in our agenda in the coming, weeks, I'd love to get AOE in to talk to us a little bit about their data projects and about the sorry, I'm not looking at the acronym right now, SSDMSS. We took some testimony on that in our committee earlier this year, and I feel like there's more to learn about that and some oversight role that maybe we should be providing. So just putting a flag in that.
Thank you.
Okay, Maria, do you want to talk about the telecommunications?
Sure.
Sure. So the final three I'll talk about, I'll go through them pretty quickly, given the time. And just to clarify, I cover the broadband and the telecom world. The IT projects that you've heard about are not really in my portfolio, so I'm happy to look up, follow through on anything, but they're just not areas that I am not familiar with. However, in the telecom sphere, the first thing I just wanted to bring your attention to is the 10-year telecom plan. This is a plan that's goes through a major review every 3 years, and it's basically to serve as the kind of the foundation for telecom policies for the state of Vermont, to do an inventory of what exists, what some of the emerging trends are, and how networks can be built out to meet the needs of Vermonters and businesses and government, et cetera. So again, it's a long-term planning document revised every 3 years. The most recent plan, the 2024 plan, has been adopted. There's a link here if you want to review that and kind of see what's incorporated and how it might inform and overlap with some of the other projects that you're looking at. The Jitoc committee did review the draft plan last year in June. And then there was a public hearing with the House Energy and Digital Infrastructure Committee and Senate Finance Committee just this past session in February, I believe. And then the Vermont Community Broadband Board. This is the 5-member quasi-independent entity that oversees broadband deployment or the appropriation of broadband funding for broadband deployment throughout the state, including pre-construction grants and construction grants. There have been significant federal dollars allocated to the board for it to complete its work, namely through ARPA, other federal legislation. There is in the Vermont criteria for grants, preference, I'm not going to say preference for fiber, there are speed requirements for broadband deployment, specifically that a service meets or exceeds 100 service. That's download, upload speeds, which currently is basically fiber. And that was a policy decision that the state made for its expenditure of public dollars. And then also to support communications union districts, which are municipal entities that build and operate their own networks or partner with private providers. In addition, there is significant federal funding available to the state through the BEAD program, which stands for the federal BEAD program, the Broadband Equity Access and Deployment Program. This was funding through the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, about $42 billion nationally through the Biden administration. Vermont, their allocation formula is allocated $229 million for broadband deployment. However, and so specific to this program, there are criteria that are different than what the state's policies are, just to be clear about that. And there have been some changes with the change in administration about what the criteria and what projects can be funded and what should be looked at. So I mentioned earlier that Vermont was moving towards public dollars going towards fiber, really, or any technology that could meet those speeds. Right now, it happens to be fiber. The current administration is focused more on not just technology neutral, but also what's called the benefit of the bargain, the least cost network infrastructure. And so that might not be fiber, which is typically expensive, could be wireless, could be satellite. And in light of that change and other changes, all states, but particularly Vermont, had to reopen its application process and review bids based on the new criteria. And I believe that process just closed. And you're going to be hearing from Christine Malquist later, so she'll go into much greater detail. And then finally, just very quickly, I wanted to bring to your attention the public safety communications system. There was a task force created 2 years ago, and the purpose of the task force was to develop a statewide integrated 911 calling system and dispatch system. 911 receives the call and then transfers to the appropriate dispatching entity, so that the appropriate first responders can respond to the call. For decades, there have been issues about the current system, which isn't really an integrated, coordinated system. There are over 40 dispatch centers in the state. They're all funded a little bit differently. There are the two state public safety answering points run by the Department of Public Safety that provide dispatch services for some municipalities who aren't necessarily paying into the system, whereas other municipalities are funding their own dispatch services. In any event, there are some areas that are at risk, not having adequate 911 services, dispatch entities. And so in an attempt to kind of address some of the inequities and the potential lack of service for some Vermonters, this task force was created, basically oversee the development of a plan. There are significant federal dollars and state dollars, mostly federal dollars, attached to the work that they do. They're in process of inventorying the current system, as well as getting recommendations from a consultant that they've retained to come up with recommendations and a plan for implementing and moving forward. So I'm sure you probably want to hear more of an update from them at a future time, but just to let you know that that was out there, and I realize we're running out of time, so I don't want to.
10:30, but thank you
Yeah.
for that. And we have about 5 minutes before 10:30, so we'll have a shorter break than we have on our schedule.